It's just 33 days now until Israel's fourth election within 2 years. This time around, there's a new title for Yamina list leader and former defense minister Naftali Bennett, Kingmaker. That's because he has not ruled out either joining a coalition headed by Benjamin Netanyahu or one without him. Current polls show Yamina could be the deciding factor in setting up a new coalition. But Bennett himself has aspirations to be king, displacing Netanyahu as both prime minister and leader of Israel's nationalist right-wing camp. But with other contenders for that role and Yamina treading downward in recent polls, Bennett is running out of time to achieve that goal. Today, he joins us for our latest series of joint I-24 News Yisrael Hayom election interviews, together with Yisrael Hayom editor-in-chief Boaz Bismuth. Naftali Bennett, thank you for joining us.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Well, it's good to be the king. It's not terrible to be the kingmaker either, but you do have aspirations. How are you planning to turn it around with a little more than a month in going into this election?
Well, my plan actually is indeed to make 10 million Israelis become kings. Every Israeli ought to become the king, because for so many years, the Israeli government has been taking so much money from them, placing so much burden on them and giving them such a lousy quality of service and incompetence. And it's time to reverse the role. In my vision, we're going to make every Israeli feel that the government works for him, and he's the king, she's the king. And that means amazing education. That means the Negev will become a place with law and order where people can live in harmony. And first and foremost, it means creating 400,000 new amazing jobs for Israelis that are unemployed. That's what these elections are about. Who's got the competence, who's got the skill set, and who cares about Israelis?
Mr. Bennett, I guess in those elections we see a tough, really tough competition on the for the silver medal in the conservative side. Maybe it will change in the future. But what is your response to Saar's negative campaign against you? And what do you think of his violation of election laws?
You know, Saar is a good political operator. I'm an entrepreneur and a leader. And what Israel needs today is not more dirty tricks. We've had enough of that. So I'm not going to use those same, mechanisms that are illegal, that anonymously hiding behind anonymous accounts and attacking Bennett, as was reported yesterday. I'm not going to resort to that. I'm focused on one thing: getting Israel out of this chaos. Israel is not managed. There's no competent management of this country. If it were a company, the CEO would be fired. And it's time to fire the CEO and bring in a new CEO, a new leader. Say thank you to Netanyahu, which I do appreciate his contribution. He's not going to be able to unite the country. He's not going to be able, he doesn't have the ability these days to reinvigorate Israel, and that's what we need. So that's what we're going to do. And the voters hopefully will come and give us that power.
But I just want to clarify, Gideon Saar also putting out a tweet today, said, let's both hold our fire now. Is that a position you agree with, that you're going to focus your efforts just on a more positive campaign?
I've been, for the past year, focused 100% of my time on the citizens of Israel. As defense minister, I initiated a series of projects, the hotels, the Corona hotels, bringing tests into Israel when everyone was opposed, helping people make a living, parnasa, bread. And I've been attacked for this sole focus on caring for jobs. I'm going to continue doing that regardless of what they do.
But I guess in order to be prime minister, you need, the Israeli system, you would need allies. After elections, Saar can become an ally?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Everyone who is Zionist, everyone who believes in a Jewish and democratic state is a potential ally in my government, in our government. And all I care about is let's set aside politics for just a few minutes. Yeah, let's give it a chance, because we're in such a huge crisis. unprecedented crisis in Israel. The only way to get out of it is to put the small politics aside, like the stuff that we've seen over the past few days, and start working. And that's why I came into politics in the first case, because I was fed up with lousy leadership that causes such distress and such agony for millions of Israelis.
I'm sorry, just one question concerning Sarah again. Elkin, is it true that he was supposed to come to you from Likud to Yamina and not to Gideon Sa'ar party?
I don't want to hurt Elkin more than he's been hurt.
I understand. It means yes.
He makes his decisions, and I respect wherever party he wants to end up in.
Right, if I can broaden the discussion out, whoever the next prime minister is or whoever's going to sit in the next government is going to have to deal with a U.S. president, a new U.S. president who believes in a two-state solution, who does not want to see Israel taking actions that, in the view of him and his closest advisors, endanger that, either declaring sovereignty in parts of the West Bank or building in settlements. And of course, serious differences about how to deal with the Iranian situation. So what parameters would you be setting, would you be willing to set either for government, either you're ahead of or that you're a part of in dealing with these issues with the United States?
Well, the U.S. is clearly our biggest ally. And as someone who lived many years in the United States, I did business all across America. So I really know familiar very deeply with the American mentality. And I believe in being very candid. All right, so not fudging the reality. There's going to be stuff we agree upon, which is 90%. There's going to be stuff we don't agree upon, and that's okay, because as prime minister, I'm looking for Israel's interest, not for the rest of the world's interest. So we'll work through that. What I can say though is, Prime Minister Netanyahu missed the biggest opportunity in our history to apply sovereignty on Judea and Samaria. As long as I'm in politics, I will never give up 1 centimeter of land of Israel. I'll be very clear. Doesn't matter who talks to me. That's not going to happen. Now, I'm very pragmatic. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done well in business with the Americans. But part of that is being very clear about what your red lines are and how you can cooperate. I'm fairly confident that we do a very good job, an amazing job, forming and reforming a great relationship with the new administration.
Mr. Bennett, if you were in the former or in the actual government and sovereignty was on the table, 30% of Judea and Samaria and the Jordan Valley, do you believe we would have had this sovereignty? And second, you spoke about priorities right now with the corona, of course. But is Yamina still aiming to bring back sovereignty on the table?
Absolutely. Yamina believes in the land of Israel. We believe in strengthening the Jewish identity of Israel. I'm Jewish. I believe that we have to embrace our heritage, our history, our roots. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm right-wing, and I'm proud of that. I'm right-wing, pragmatic, very practical. I guess because of the business background, we're not giving up on that. I think that the most pressing priority right now is getting 1 million unemployed Israelis back to work. When you're hungry, you don't care about ideals, right? When you don't know how you're going to make your rent in the next couple of weeks, the rest doesn't matter. And the top priority of an Israeli leader, of a Jewish leader, is to bring bread to the people, to keep dignity. A job isn't only bread. A job is dignity. And every father and mother should be able to provide for their children.
I want to ask you, in this election, the role of Israel's Arab citizens have taken a more prominent role. We've seen Prime Minister Netanyahu sort of shift his perspective there. A government that is headed by a Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett. What would be the role either for Israeli Arabs or Israeli Arab parties? Can you see them being part of that government, or some elements that would accept the parameters that you said, accepting Israel as a Jewish and democratic state?
I would do what I've always done as education minister, economy minister, and minister of defense of Israel. I'll embrace every citizen, every good-hearted citizen of Israel, whether Jewish or Arab, but I'll have zero tolerance for anyone who fights against Israel's very existence. That's why I was dismayed that Prime Minister Netanyahu has been hugging Abbas Mansour. This guy, Abbas Mansour, belongs to a party which is part of the Muslim Brotherhood. It's a sister organization of Hamas. Moreover, just yesterday, the Likud ran out of a very crucial vote against Balad, which are people that go and visit terrorists who killed Israelis. And the Likud just ran away, which is crazy. So, now, I understand the political need of Netanyahu to get a vote here or there, but there are red lines, and unfortunately, that's something I would never accept. So the bottom line is embrace the majority of Arabs who want to become part and parcel of the Israeli society, but fight with be very tough on anyone who uses terror, embraces terror, or undermines the existence of the Jewish state.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Bennett, you know that in Israel, the day after the election is even more puzzling than the day before elections. And the big story, that all these brains of the Jewish people has been reduced to yes or no Netanyahu. This is what we have been reduced to. Where do you place yourself? And a very blunt question, very direct question. You have the choice, you, Yamina, right-wing conservative party. You choose between Prime Minister Netanyahu. You can, crown him, or Lapid. What do you do?
First of all, I'm right-wing. And my goal is to retain a national government while parting from Netanyahu. Not because he's a bad guy. He's not. He's not a bad guy. But after 32 years in politics, 32 years, it's not working. Anyone who looks out the window sees it's not working. The gross incompetence of the past year, the fact that Netanyahu and Miri Regev prevented corona testing in the Ben Gurion airport and massively imported all the variants, all the mutations, which are killing Israelis now. I'm not saying they did it on purpose, but they did it. How can they show their face? There's a point in time where you need to part from a leader, and I promise everyone, the day after will be great. In fact, it will be even better. Israel will continue to prosper. Israel's future does not depend on Netanyahu. We're much bigger than that.
But to setting up the kind of government that you just described may require sitting with Benjamin Netanyahu. What would be, if that is your alternative, would you choose that over going to new elections? And if so, what would be your parameters in that kind of partnership?
Well, first of all, I'll say that contrary to Lapid and Lieberman and Gideon, I don't boycott the Likud. They're boycotting. They're effectively saying that anyone who votes Likud, their vote won't be counted because it's boycotted. You don't do that in a democracy. I respect the democratic vote. I'm trying to persuade Likudniks, primarily Likudniks, but certainly folks who are trying to vote for Gideon or Yvette or whatever, give us power and we'll make Israel amazing very quickly. And we come here with very clear evidence of what we've done. I'm not a day in politics. I promised to increase mathematics. I promised to break monopolies. I did. I broke the yellow cheese monopoly, the cement monopoly. No one did it. I did, and prices went down. But that's only the tip of the iceberg of what we can achieve here in Israel.
Mr. Bennett, 15, 16, 17 seats of Yamina, it means that you're first in rotation, you're the Prime Minister?
I'm not focused on rotations. I'm more focused on preventing mutations from coming into Israel, and primarily on you called me the Kingmaker. I firmly believe
can become king.
I firmly believe that if the Israeli voter gives us the power, we're going to make every Israeli a king here and queen.
All right. Well, we will know in a little more than a month where it goes. Of course, if this is indeed...
You're optimistic.
Of course, who's to say we won't have a fifth round of elections? Naftali Bennett, thank you for joining us on I-24 News.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being here.